A very warm welcome. It's lovely to see you again, and thank you for joining us. One of the absolute favourites of our guests, and I think for so many people who come to the UK, is to have a trip to Windsor. Now, there are a number of different ways of making the most of your time in Windsor, so that's what we're focusing on today. And as we said before, please ask questions. We want to make sure that you're really happy and comfortable with everything that your clients can do. And we will be sending you the recordings and information afterwards. It will all be there for you to see. So Windsor, I think, really forms part of our itineraries, partially because of its location. It's so brilliantly located to get to all sorts of places. But also it holds, I think, a very special place in many people's hearts. So whether we're creating itineraries for 2 days or 12 days, Windsor normally features in there somewhere. So just ask the question. It's easily accessible from London for the day, or as part of an itinerary. And I've got something a really special. I mean, we've shared some rather lovely ultimate experiences with you already, but the one at Windsor is really quite extraordinary. So this view of Windsor is one that is not seen by the public. It's the east side of the castle from the private area of the home park, and it really is just such a beautiful building. You can see why the Queen loves it. And as with our palaces and castles and stately homes, there's a good bit of history around Windsor, obviously. So just briefly to share with you, the history of Windsor Castle goes back 1,000 years to dear old William the Conqueror. And in 10,070, he started building a fortress at Windsor, which formed part of what I guess we would call nowadays the Ring of Steel around London. It was all about protecting the capital, and cementing his base of power and so on. So that was when Windsor for the first time came into play, and its strategic importance for the monarchs of the time really came into being. And since that time, over the last 1,000 years, it has been the home of 40 kings and queens of our country, which is quite extraordinary. Now, the number obviously has reduced in recent years because dear Queen Elizabeth II has been on the throne for such a long time, thank heavens. But certainly in the early days, the monarchs did change quite a lot. So hence having 40 of them. And it is reported that it is Queen Elizabeth II's favourite home. It's the place that she goes to every weekend. It's the place that she and Prince Philip really quickly moved to when all of this broke, and that's where they're staying at the moment. And apparently she had many happy times growing up there with Princess Margaret, her sister. But it really seems to hold a very special place in her heart. So I think that's what adds to it for us as well. So a few, or quite a few of our monarchs have really sort of made their mark and made some changes at Windsor. But three of them really stand out. King Edward III, who came to the throne in 1327, all that time ago, he really made the first major changes. And it went from being a fortress and a defence of London to the most incredible Gothic palace, a lot of which we can still see today. But his changes turned it into a real home. So for the first time, There were proper state apartments and private apartments. The monarch of the day could entertain there, and so on. So that was quite significant. Now we all love a good Tudor story, Henry VIII and all of his wives and so on. And it was a real favourite with him apparently because his love of hunting, shooting, and fishing and those country pursuits, which we're talking about on Friday. His love of them is certainly well known, and he loved hunting there. And apparently there was a window quite high up, and he used to have a bit of shooting practice and so on. Elizabeth I contributed the long gallery because she liked to be able to walk in inclement weather, which obviously happens from time to time in this country. And then 100 years or so later, Charles II, the restoration of the monarchy in 1660, he really made his mark and turned it into this incredibly opulent Baroque style. So you've got a number of contrasting styles within the palace, and it's quite interesting that during the Civil War, Oliver Cromwell seems to pop up at an awful lot of the castles and palaces and stately homes across the country. So he seemed to like the trappings of monarchy, although he perhaps didn't agree with the institution of it. But anyway, it was restored to its splendour. And I just thought I'd share a couple of little facts that you might know, but you might not know. The kitchen clocks in Windsor are absolutely critical because obviously all of the entertaining and so on that goes on, and the kitchen clocks are permanently set 5 minutes fast to ensure that no member of the royal family or visiting head of state is ever served late with their lunch or dinner. And I think being the custodian of the wine cellars at Windsor must be quite extraordinary. 18,000 bottles of wine down there, so it would be a little bit of a treasure trove and one worth visiting. And the Round Tower may be called the Round Tower, but in actual fact, one side of it is flat, and that was all to do when it was being used for defensive purposes. So it may be called the Round Tower, but it's not in reality. Now, one of the really special places to visit when you go have a visit to Windsor Castle is St George's Chapel. It is absolutely beautiful. Pictures just can't do it justice. And it was, I think, a wonderful moment for many of us Brits a couple of years ago, seeing Windsor absolutely come alive for the wedding of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. It was absolutely full of people joining in the celebrations and just wanting to be part of the moment. And we were absolutely delighted that the sun was shining and the sky was as blue as it is in that picture. But I believe we were showing Britain at its best that day. It was a really glorious occasion and one that we love doing, and I think we do rather well. The other interesting bit about St George's is the link with the Knights of the Garter. And the Knights of the Garter as a group were also formed back in the 14th century. And at the time, it was a group of noblemen, aristocracy, and so on, whom the monarch of the day knew they could trust. So if those pesky rebels in the north or somebody invaded and stoked up a rebellion, these were the trusty supporters of the crown. And the Knights of the Garter continue today for slightly different purposes. The monarch of the day and the Prince of Wales, or the heir to the throne, is always a Knight of the Garter, and then they select who they want to be part. And there's some interesting ceremonial elements to being a knight. And we're going back a couple of hundred years since this happened, but if a knight had found to be disloyal to the crown in any way, then they had a degradation ceremony, which sounds rather horrible. And they were taken to St George's, and all of the heraldry was ripped from the walls and kicked out into the gutter as the individual in question was forced to leave and not to darken the doors again. But up in the attics of the chapel is a lot of British heraldry of former knights, because when a knight dies, it's not a hereditary role or anything like that. So the title dies with them, and for those families who, I don't know, maybe don't want all of the heraldry that has gone with it, it's all left behind and stored upstairs. But there is also the possibility of having um, a um, a crest designed specially for your clients. There are a couple of specialists who are based in Windsor. So if you have a client who wants their own crest, a family crest, then just ask the question and we'll make it happen. So these are some of the wonderful images of Windsor, and the bottom right is St George's Chapel, as you can see, and you may well recognise that if you watched the wedding a couple of years ago. Now, the castle may take up a fair chunk of Windsor, but there's lots to see alongside it, which can make a really fabulous day in Windsor. We would always recommend a lovely river cruise. The River Thames in that area of surrounding Windsor is absolutely stunning, and our favourite skippers know everything that there is to know about that stretch of the river and the people who live on it, and they love sharing all of the stories and so on. So your clients can choose either just to have a couple of hour cruise in the afternoon, or after their visit to the castle they can climb aboard and enjoy a lovely lunch while cruising up and down. So it's a very different perspective of the castle, and it's a lovely way to see Windsor. Afternoon tea, obviously. I mean, we love our afternoon tea over here, and that's a rather nice thing to do if they've had a bit of an amble round the shops. Windsor is a very sweet little place to go shopping. Comfortable shoes are a must because it's a little bit hilly, but everything is quite close together, so it's a nice place for an amble. And just about a stone's throw, about a 5 minute walk from the castle, they can cross the bridge into Eton, which is a very sweet little town, some lovely little shops and restaurants, and is obviously home to the world famous public school where both Princes Harry and William went to school. I think our current Prime Minister, I think Boris Johnson, went there too. So it's a rather special place, and depending on term time and commitments and so on, we can certainly explore a tour of Eton if your clients are interested. So it's literally right next door. Now, the other really special part of Windsor is Windsor Great Park. Now, this covers close on 5,000 acres, so there's a heck of a lot of parkland to enjoy. So if your clients fancy a bit of horse riding, whether they are a complete novice and never been on a horse before, through to experienced riders, the stables at the park are absolutely superb, and they can enjoy a wonderfully relaxing amble through the park. There's no road riding or anything like that. It's all bridleways and so on. It's really very special. And the other opportunity, which is a rather wonderful way to arrive at Windsor, is to climb aboard one of the beautiful carriages and arrive at Windsor that way. So we can arrange for the chauffeured car to go to the east gate of the park, where they will be met by Rebecca and their carriage driver, and swept through the park, which is just lovely. And Rebecca shares all sorts of stories, but what is very special is that Rebecca inherited the carriage driving business from her father, and when he passed away, the Queen wrote to Rebecca asking whether she was going to continue doing the carriage rides, and adding her wish that the business would continue. So your guests can almost feel like they've had a bit of royal consent to their carriage driving experience through the park, and the horses are just beautiful. And obviously they can have a glass of champagne. There are a number of different carriages. So that one obviously is designed just for a couple of people, but there are some wonderful ones that are covered over and are suitable for families and small children, and so on. We quite often hear that the children tend to fall asleep. I think it's the movement of the carriage, but it's a real treat. It's a lovely way to arrive. So, as you can see, there is plenty to fill a great day at Windsor. That the picture of the bridge on the bottom right is the bridge that I mentioned, crossing between Windsor and Eton. So it's you can have a really great day. Now, location-wise, Windsor, as I said earlier, I mean it's about a 40-minute drive from London, so it's not far away at all, and is easily accessible for a trip on to Oxford and the Cotswolds and so on, just a little bit further down the M4, heading westwards. It is also rather well located for those clients of yours who are rather partial to very good food. It is Michelin starred foodie heaven around that area, with Heston Blumenthal's the Fat Duck and the Hind's Head and the Waterside, all of which are located in Bray, which is a riverside village not far from Windsor. So maybe after a wonderful day at Windsor, they can go and have a rather fabulous meal. And equally, there are some lovely hotels close by if they're not going back into London. Cliveden is 15-20 minutes away. There's Cowes Park, and then obviously Heckfield Place, again about 20 minutes away, just heading further south. So there's an awful lot that is nice and close and easy to get to. So here we are, an example of, as we say, our perfect day in Windsor. Arriving about 10ish for that rather lovely carriage ride through Windsor Great Park. At the end, they will be met by their private guide and taken on the rather lovely exploration of Windsor Castle, with all of the lovely secrets and the stories and so on. And we recommend to really do justice to the castle about 2.5 hours, realistically. They can do it in less, but we don't want to shortchange anyone. So realistically about 2.5 hours. And then time for lunch, either at one of the lovely restaurants in town, or as I said earlier, a lovely picnic aboard their river launch while enjoying the scenery from the river. If they want to do the horse ride, obviously that's on the doorstep as well. But just to give you a feel for a rather lovely day in Windsor. And there's quite obviously that with the different options, everything from a simple visit to Windsor, a private guided tour around the castle, and that's it, through to the signature includes the river cruise and picnic lunch and carriage ride. And then the ultimate, you can offer your clients a private out of hours guided tour of the castle, which is really rather lovely. Now, as the name suggests, it has to be early evening, and the times vary depending on whether it's the winter or the summer months. But we are able to book that for your guests if they'd like to go around it on their own. So it's a rather lovely way of doing it. It's not available all the time, but we can certainly secure it when Her Majesty isn't in residence. Now, I'd also like to share with you, this should be the ultimate experience at Windsor Castle that I'd like to share with you. Now, because of the sensitivities of our royal family and the commercialism and so on around the royal family, we are not allowed to put this in writing. But I want to let you know, as obviously fans of Windsor, that we can arrange a private tour, a fully private tour of the Royal Library at Windsor. Now, the Royal Library is a quite extraordinary place. It is only ever opened for visiting heads of state. So no member of the public ever can gain access to the library. And on this, an example of a visit would be that they are taken for a private tour of St George's, followed by this private tour of the library and the royal librarian for a lovely couple who visited golly, last summer now, and they were from a rather lovely area in North Carolina. So we got a bit of detail about where they were from, and the royal librarian prepared their own personal display of books that all related to where they came from, which was very special. It's quite it really is quite breathtaking to go in there. And then following the tour of the Royal Library, once the palace is closed, they will have an amazing tour of the castle. Dare I say it, not with the normal tour guide, but with one of the members of the Queen's staff. So you get or your clients will get a very personal view of the castle, which is quite extraordinary and very special. And depending on availability, we can also arrange lunch on that day with the governor of the castle. And he is the chap who's fully employed and is basically the CEO, if you like, of Windsor Castle, but he knows everything that's going on. So it's an amazing day. I'm afraid I can't put it in writing, but if you have a request and the clients are genuinely interested in doing it, you won't be surprised to hear that the prices start at around the sort of £18,000 mark, something like that. Then if they are interested, just give us a call and we will see what we can do for them. Okay, now all of this lovely information, as always, can be found on the website. Unfortunately, we can't do any filming inside Windsor Castle as we've done at Blenheim and Highclere, so we can't do that. But we can certainly share all sorts of lovely images with you, which is wonderful. And we are just collating a sequence of videos of the horse riding and carriage riding and so on, which we will share very soon once we can get back out there and do some recording. So that is our little trip through Windsor. There's another view down the long walk of our wonderful castle. So if you could unmute, if you haven't done already, Lisa, and I will happily answer any questions. Is there anything in the chat box at all?
We have had one question in the chat actually about whether Morris could do a Windsor tour for.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Oh, well, you've probably gathered from Morris that he's rather passionate about our royal family, and yes, he has done that, and he'll also be more than happy to join your guests on their river cruise and share some of his knowledge and his stories. So so yes, most definitely. Thank you for that. Is there anything else that we can? Have we really answered everybody's questions? That's not bad going. Okay. Super. Well, as I say, a huge thank you for joining us again. We will be sharing all of the glorious information with you following the call, and we really look forward to and hope you can join us on Friday. Oh, thank you, Debbie. I saw the thumbs up. Appreciate that. Thank you. We hope you can join us on Friday for a rather lovely exploration into some of the country pursuits, from clay shooting and falconry and so on. So a bit more of an active day, but one of our clients' real favourites. So we hope you can join us. Please do get in touch if you've got any questions, but we look forward to seeing you on Friday. Thanks so much. Bye bye.
Thank you.